Well, it finally happened. Georgia just changed the rules for every homeowner with an HOA. And if you own a home in an HOA, then you need to watch this video. I've been selling real estate in Atlanta for years, and I have to be honest, this has been a long time coming. HOAs, not only here in Georgia, but really all states, have been out of control for a very long time. Fees with no ceiling, fines for things that absolutely just lacked common sense. And the worst part, if you had a dispute, you were almost completely helpless. No office to call, no state agency overseeing things, no oversight of any kind. Your really only option was to hire a super expensive attorney and go to court battling the HOA. But get this, that same HOA used your monthly dues to pay their lawyer to fight you. It makes zero sense. And that has been the reality for Georgia homeowners for as long as I've been doing this. Well, until now. The most comprehensive HOA oversight bill in Georgia state history just passed both the state Senate and the House of Representatives, and it's on its way to Governor Brian Kemp's desk. Senate Bill 406, officially called the Georgia Property Owners Bill of Rights Act. And if you own a property governed by an HOA in the state of Georgia, you need to understand what this now means for you. And here's some context that puts this in perspective. Homeowners associations now govern, listen to this, 1/3 of all homes in the United States. 1/3. That is a lot. Georgia alone has an estimated 4,000 or more active associations, and every single one of them is going to be affected by this bill. This affects an enormous number of Georgia homeowners. But before I walk you through what this bill actually does, I want to give you some context on why it matters so much, because I don't think most people fully understand how unprotected Georgia homeowners have been up until this point. Up until now, there were no universal laws governing homeowners associations in Georgia. And here's what made it so maddening. HOAs could do almost anything they wanted, and homeowners had no real recourse. They could fine you into debt, they could put a lien on your home, they could threaten foreclosure, and if you push back, if you said, hey, this isn't right, the only path forward was a courtroom against an HOA that was funding their legal fight with your monthly dues. This is the system Georgia homeowners and a lot of homeowners in the United States have been living under for a very long time. Think about what that really means. You're fighting an HOA that is using your money, your monthly dues, to pay their lawyer to fight you. Most people realistically cannot afford that. So they pay the fine, they pay the assessment, they absorb whatever the board decides because the alternative is a legal battle. Most homeowners may or may not win, and even when they're completely in the right, and it's just too financially risky. I have talked about HOA risk in previous videos, and if you watched my condo nightmare video, then you know I've been sounding the alarm on this. The lack of accountability has been a real problem for people, and this bill is the first meaningful response to this that the state has ever seen. All right, so let's talk about what the bill actually does and why it matters. And let me walk you through the key provisions in plain language, because a lot of what's been reported on this is written in, well, legal jargon that doesn't immediately translate to what it means for you as a homeowner. This, to me, is the biggest part of this bill, and it is registration and accountability. The first major change is that HOAs will now be required to register with the Georgia Secretary of State. This sounds simple, but the implications are significant. If an HOA is not registered with the state, it cannot collect fines or fees, issue liens, or start foreclosure proceedings. And this is not a one and done, one-time registration. HOAs must renew their registration every single year for $100 to maintain their enforcement authority. The annual renewal requirement is important because it means ongoing accountability. It's not just check a box once and then be forgotten about. An association that lapses on its registration loses its enforcement power until it gets current. That is a massive shift in power. Right now, HOAs can do all of these things with essentially no oversight. Under this bill, registration is not optional. It is the price of having an enforcement authority, and an HOA that refuses to comply or gets its registration revoked loses its ability to collect from you entirely. That accountability just didn't exist before. And the Secretary of State's office will have real power here. The ability to deny, suspend, revoke registrations, limit an association's ability to impose fines or liens, and conduct investigations and hearings. For the first time, there is actually someone to call when an HOA is acting crazy. There will now be a place to file complaints. This might be the change I think that means the most to the most people. Homeowners currently have no state office to turn to with HOA complaints. That changes under this bill. Homeowners will be able to file complaints directly with the Secretary of State's office and have disputes handled through a formal hearing process without having to immediately hire an attorney and go to court. I think this is huge because the reason so many HOAs have gone essentially unchallenged is because the barrier to fighting back was simply too high for most homeowners. There will now be a formal complaint process, and to me, that levels the playing field in a real way. Okay, so what if you already live in an HOA? What does this mean for you? Here are your rights as a homeowner. The bill establishes a formal list of owner rights: the right to receive proper notices, the right to access records and insurance information, the right to attend meetings, the right to a due process before any enforcement action is taken against you. And I know these things sound like that they should have always been guaranteed, but in Georgia, until now, they weren't. Well, not universally anyway. What was in your specific HOA's governing documents varied enormously from community to community. This bill now creates a baseline floor of rights that every homeowner in an HOA governed property is entitled to, regardless of what their specific documents say. And part of that is how payments must be applied. This one is very specific and important. This bill establishes rules for how associations must apply your payments. First to regular dues, then to special assessments, then to other fees and fines. And critically, associations cannot refuse partial payments. Right now, some associations will refuse to accept a partial payment and then argue that because you didn't pay the balance in full, including fees, maybe attorney's costs, that they added on top of what you already owed, that you're in default. That tactic will be prohibited. If you send a payment, they have to take it and apply it in the proper order. There will also be foreclosure protections. This is the section that I want every condo and HOA homeowner to understand very clearly, because foreclosure has been one of the most frightening and misused tools in an HOA's arsenal. Under current Georgia law, an HOA can initiate foreclosure when a lien exceeds $2,000. $2,000. That threshold includes fines. So, an HOA can stack up fines for minor violations like not rolling your trash can in, and let's say that fine was, $100, and then they start stacking on the late fees and fines on top of that. And then once they get to $2,000, they can start threatening you with losing your home. That is not hypothetical. It has happened. So under this new bill, the foreclosure threshold increases to $4,000. And get this, fines and fees are excluded from that calculation. Only actual unpaid dues counts towards that threshold. So an HOA can't pad a foreclosure threat with fines for leaving your trash bin out. The number has to be real unpaid dues. The pre-foreclosure notice period also extends to 90 days. That is up from the current window, and the notice must specifically state that paying within that period eliminates the right to foreclose. So basically, no more vague threats, no more homeowners who didn't realize they had time to fix the situation. And there's a limited stay of foreclosure available while certain appeals are pending. So basically what this means is you actually have the ability to challenge the process without losing your home while you do it. I think you guys are going to love this one. Attorney fee reform. When an HOA takes a homeowner to court over unpaid dues or fines, right now they typically use association funds, meaning your monthly payments to pay their attorneys. And under the current law, those attorneys' fees can be added to what you owe, creating a debt that grows faster than most people can pay down. Under this new bill, associations must give specific written notice, a 30-day opportunity to pay, and an itemized list of fees before attorney's costs can be pursued. And a judge must make a formal finding that the fees being requested are actually reasonable before they can be awarded. That is a meaningful check on a practice that has been used to financially overwhelm homeowners for a very long time. And this is something that a lot of people are not going to realize. The attorney fee section of this bill actually takes effect July 1st. So July 1 of 2026 for actions filed on or after that date, earlier than the rest of the bill, which takes effect January 1 of 2027. So again, the attorney fee section of this bill will take effect July 1st. Everything else following in this bill is going to take effect January 1 of next year. Okay, what this means nationally. I want to take a minute on this because the question I know a lot of people outside of Georgia are going to ask is, how does this affect me? The honest answer is not really directly. HOA law is governed state by state. This bill will only apply to Georgia, but what Georgia just did matters nationally for one important reason. Only a small number of states, including Colorado, Florida, and Nevada, have dedicated agencies that actually regulate HOAs and handle disputes. Most states are still where Georgia was before this bill passed, leaving homeowners with essentially no recourse outside of a courtroom. But if there's a silver lining in all of this, in 2026, HOA reform legislation is moving through 46 states across the country. The conversation is absolutely happening everywhere, and Georgia just became one of the most protected states for HOA homeowners in the entire country. If you live in another state and you're watching this, pay attention to what your legislature is doing on this issue, because the problems are not just unique to Georgia, obviously. The lack of oversight, the fee increases, the foreclosure threats over minor fees, that is happening everywhere, and HOAs operate without any accountability. What this means if you are a home buyer, if you are in the process of buying a home in an HOA, whether it's a condo, a townhome, a single family home in a planned community, doesn't matter. This bill changes things in a meaningful way. The risk associated with living in an HOA has not disappeared. Fees can still increase. Special assessments can still happen. A poorly run building or a poorly run HOA is still a poorly run HOA. Everything I've talked about in my other HOA videos is still real and it is still relevant. So those documents that I tell you to go get in those videos, I still want you to do those things. But The complete absence of accountability and oversight that made all of those risks so hard to manage, that is what's changing. Starting January 1st of 2027, homeowners in Georgia will have a place to go, a process to follow, and rights that are guaranteed by state law rather than whatever specific HOA's governing documents happen to say. For my home buyers, I want to tell you this. Do not let this bill make you complacent in your due diligence. Pull the meeting minutes, check the reserve fund, understand the financials before you buy. The bill creates accountability going forward. It does not fix the problems that already exist in a building you are about to buy in. Okay, so what does this mean for my current homeowners that live in an HOA? If you already own a home governed by an HOA and you have been dealing with issues, fees you can't get explained, fines that don't seem right, a board that won't let you see financials, mark January 1st, 2027 on your calendar. That is when the complaint process opens. That is when the registration requirement kicks in. This is when you will have a real option beyond hiring an attorney and hoping for the best. But everybody, I probably don't have to tell you this, but you might want to get prepared, because can you imagine on January 1, 2027, the flood of phone calls that is going to come flying into the Secretary of State's office? So I also think you got to get ready for this stuff. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Between now and then, start documenting everything. Keep records of every payment you make. Keep copies of every notice you receive. If your HOA is doing something that doesn't feel right, write it down with dates, because when the complaint process is available, the homeowners who are prepared with documentation are going to be in a much stronger position than the ones who aren't. And listen, this is one of those videos where I genuinely hope you share it, because a lot of people who need to know about this bill won't find it on their own. If you know someone dealing with HOA issues right now, a neighbor, a family member, anyone, send them this video. If you are trying to figure out your next step and you just want to have an easy, real conversation, text or call me, numbers on the screen. Yes, that is my cell phone number. And if you are considering buying a home in an HOA and you want to know exactly which questions to ask, what documents to review before you buy, that's what I cover in the next video. Link is on the screen right now, and I hope to see you over there.